Hey, what is going on, everybody? It is Rob, aka The Diligent Dev, and welcome to this Firebase Cloud Functions tutorial. In this tutorial, we'll be creating a REST API with full CRUD capabilities. Now, if you get any value out of this content, make sure you smash that like and subscribe button. And without further ado, let's jump over to the computer and get right into it. Alright, so the first thing we're going to need to do is go to firebase.google.com. If you don't have an account, go ahead and sign up for one. Once you have, go to your console, click on Add a Project. We'll call this Firebase Functions API. Hit Continue again, select Default Account, and hit Create Project. And once this is done, I will be right back. Okay, so the project has been created. We're going to hit Continue. And we're going to do a couple things here. First thing we're going to do is we're going to click on Database. And then we're going to click Create a Database. It's going to be a Cloud Firestore database. And then we will start in test mode. And we'll hit Next. And Done. And once this is done provisioning, I will be right back. Alright, so our Firebase database has been provisioned. So the next thing we're going to need to do is install the Firebase CLI. So I've gone ahead and went to firebase.google.com/docs/CLI. And I'll leave a link to this in the description. And we're going to install their CLI globally on our machines. So you see they have different instructions depending on what operating system you're on. But I believe both should be installable through npm. So we'll check Windows. And I believe Mac's going to be the same command. So what we're going to do is go ahead and grab this command. We're going to open up a terminal. And paste that in. And let that run. And once that's done, I will be right back. Okay, so I got an error because on my Mac, I am not running it as a administrator. So what you need to do on a Mac is put sudo in front of this npm install. So I'll put sudo right here, hit run. It's going to ask me for the password to my computer. And then if I can type it in right, it's going to go ahead and install. So this is for Mac users only. Windows users won't have to worry about this. Okay, so finally everything installed successfully. So what we're going to do is I'm going to close out of this. We're going to close out of the browser. I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call it Firebase Functions API. And then I'm going to go ahead and open up Visual Studio Code. I'm going to go to Open. I'm going to go to my desktop, and I'm going to open up Firebase Functions API. So we have just a blank folder here opened in Visual Studio Code. I'm going to open a new terminal, and I'm going to run the following command, Firebase init. Then it's going to ask me which features I want to be using, so I'm going to choose Firestore and Functions and hit Enter. It's going to ask me if I want to use an existing project, and I do because we already set one up. And we are going to use the Firebase Functions API project. Where do we want to store our Firestore rules? I'm just going to hit Enter so it chooses the default of the Firestore.rules. Then it's going to ask me where I want to place the indexes, and we'll just hit Enter to choose the default again. It's going to ask what type of language we want to use for the Cloud Functions, and we're just going to choose JavaScript. Do we want to use ESLint? I'm going to say yes. And then do we want to install dependencies now with npm? And I'm also going to choose yes. And this is going to take a second to run, so when it's done, I will be right back. Okay, so now everything has installed. Let's take a look at what we've got here. You see we've got this functions folder. We'll open that up. We have our node modules. So inside of our Firebase functions, we can use any npm packages that we'd like, and they will all be stored in here. We have our ESLint configuration file, a gitignore, this index.js, and this is where we'll be writing all of our Firebase functions. Packagelock.json and a package.json to keep track of different things like our scripts and packages that we'll need. And then we have a Firebase Firebase configuration file. We have a gitignore, a firebase.json to tell it where we have our rules and our indexes and how to deploy it. And then we have our Firestore indexes and our Firestore rules. Okay, so let's head back up to this index.js file. Now you'll see it imports the dependency of Firebase Functions, and we're going to be using those to make our functions. And they give us this example here. So we're going to go ahead and uncomment this. And what this example does is it exports a function called hello world, and it's an HTTPS. And on the request of that function, we'll get a request and a response, and the response will send back hello from Firebase. Now to show you how easy it is to deploy these Firebase functions, we're going to go ahead and do it right now. So I'm going to run Firebase deploy -- only functions. And I'm going to give this a second to run, and once it's done, I will be right back. Okay, so as indicated by the CLI, our Firebase function has deployed successfully. So what I'm going to do is head back to Firebase. I'm going to go to the Functions tab, and you'll see that we have it right here. Now what I'm going to be using to test out our API is a program called Postman, and I will leave a link to it in the description below. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my Postman, and I'm going to drag it to this side of the screen. Drag this over here to this side of the screen. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller just so I can grab this URL out of here. Copy that. I'll come back over to Postman. I'll make it full screen now. We will post this URL in here, and then we will hit send. And when we hit send, we get a response back from the server that says hello from Firebase, and that is exactly what we specified here in the function itself. Okay, so this is all fine and dandy, but let's go ahead and make something a little bit more interesting. And what we're going to do here is set up a REST API. So in order to do that, we're going to import some packages here at the top. We're going to say const express equals require express. We're going to say const course equals require course. And then we're going to initialize our express app, and I've misspelled express there. So we're going to say const app equals express. Now the reason we're doing this is because Firebase functions as they exist right now in our hello world function do not have the concept of get, post, put, delete, all that good stuff. So when we're creating a REST API, we're going to use the Express framework to do this. So down here, we're going to create a couple of API endpoints. So we'll say app.get, and we'll give it the route, and we're just going to specify a /, and you'll see why I'm about to do that a little bit later. And then we'll say, we'll give it a request and a response, set that equal to an arrow function, and we're just going to copy this right here and paste in a post request. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is set our user. So we're going to be passing a user in through the request body. So const user equals request.body. Now, in order to push data in and out of our Firestore, we're going to need to set up the Firebase admin. So we'll come up here and we'll say const admin equals require Firebase admin. So we'll come back down to our post request and we'll say admin.firestore.collection, and we'll set it to the users collection, and then we'll hit add, and then we'll just pass it the user that we have here. Now this is an async function, so we're going to await it, and then we'll make it async up here. And then once this has completed, we will say res.status 201, which stands for created, and we'll just send it back. And now that we have our post request all set up, we'll come down here and we will make an exports. So we'll say exports.user equals functions.https on request, and we will pass it our Express app that we created, and this will set up an endpoint of user, and when we don't specify anything in the URL path, it's just the base path of user. So now that we have that all done and set up, we will run our Firebase deploy, and I will be right back once that finishes. Okay, so you see that our function has uploaded with the name of user, and I went to go test the function and I realized that I had an error and it was throwing a 500. So in order to debug your errors in your Firebase functions, you can open up this logs and you'll see we have an error here. And it's telling me that the default Firebase app does not exist. Make sure you call initialize app before using any Firebase services. So what this means is I forgot something up here. After this admin, we need to say admin.initialize app. And we'll save this. And then I'm going to run this again, and I will be right back once it's finished. All right, so the function finished uploading. So what I did is I grabbed this URL right here. I went over to Postman, and I pasted it in here. I made sure that I checked post request, and then I put some sample JSON in here. So you want to click raw, and then you can go down here and click JSON. And now that this is all loaded up, we can go ahead and hit send. And you'll see it sent, and we got our 201 back. So if we go over to Firebase, we go into the database, and we look, and now we have a users collection and one document in there with the exact data that we passed from Postman. So now that we have data flowing into the database, let's pull it back out. And in this GET request, we're going to grab all the users we have in the database. So we'll say const snapshots equals admin.firestore.collection. We'll grab the users collection, and we'll just do a GET on it. Now below this, we will declare an empty array called users to hold our data. And we will say snapshots.forEach. Oh, this is an async function, so we'll do an await. And we'll do async up here. So we'll say snapshots.forEach, grab the document, and we'll say let ID equal doc.id. We'll let data equal doc.data. And then we'll say users.push. We will push the ID in there, and then we'll do the spread operator on the data. And then below that, we will say res.status, and we will pass back a 200 with this, and we will send json.stringify our users data. So after we're done, we'll save everything, and we will run our Firebase deploy -- only functions command, and once that's done, I will be right back. Okay, so while trying to upload the Firebase functions, I got a linter error. And the reason I was getting it was because it didn't like this spread operator I have here. So the way to fix this is to go into your ESLint configuration file here and change this ECMA version from 2017 to 2019 if you're getting that error. So if I scroll down here, you'll see that after I fixed that, it uploaded just completely fine. So let's go ahead and open Postman back up. Let's paste in our URL and make sure that it's a GET request and hit send. And you'll see we get our data back. I will change this to JSON to make it look a little prettier here. And you see we get our ID along with all of the data of our user. Okay, so now that we have our GET request to return all users, let's make another GET request to just get one user. So we're going to say app.get. We'll pass it a path of /:ID. We'll set up our request and response variables. And then we'll say const snapshots equals await. And we'll have to make this an asynchronous function. Admin.firestore.collection. And we're going to be referencing the users collection. And we'll grab the documents, and we will pass in request.params.id. And then we'll do a GET on that. We will grab the user ID, and set that equal to snapshot.id, and then we will grab const user data and set that equal to snapshots.data. And then we will return, so we'll say res.status. We will return a 200 with this. And we will send json.stringify and send ID as user ID. And then just do the spread operator and send the user data. And we will save this, and then we will run our Firebase deploy, and when that is finished, I will be right back. So now I've opened Postman, and this was our first GET request that we had, so I'm going to go ahead and copy this. We are going to make a new GET request, and I'm going to go ahead and copy the ID for this user, and all we're going to do is put a / and then the ID, and we're going to hit send. And you'll see here that we have all the JSON being returned, but instead of it being wrapped in an array, it's just a single JSON object. Okay, so we have our post request to add users to the database, a GET request to get all users, a GET request to get an individual user. So now let's create a post request to update an individual user. And to do this, we'll do app.put. We will set a route of /:ID. We will set up a request and response, set that equal to an arrow function. And the first thing we're going to do is pull the body out of the request. So we'll say const body equals request.body. And then we will say await. And if we do an await, we have to do an async up here. So we'll say admin.firestore.collection. We're referencing the users collection. Do .doc, and we'll say request.params.id, and then we'll do an update, and we will pass in the spread operator of the body. And then once this is all finished, we will say response.status 200.send, and then we'll have to come down here and we will deploy our Firebase function. And once this is done deploying, I'll be right back. Okay, so now that the function has deployed, let's go ahead and test it. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this one that we use for our GET request, and I'm going to paste it in here. I'm going to change it to a put request. I'm going to come back here and copy this JSON. We're going to go to body, raw, JSON. We'll paste it in here. And the only thing that I want to update is email. You can update any fields that you'd like, except for ID. But I'm going to update the email. So we'll say the diligent dev@test.com. I'm going to go ahead and hit send. And you'll see right here in our Firestore database that it has updated correctly. Okay, so the last thing we're going to cover here is how to delete items out of a Firestore database. So we're going to say app.delete, and we're going to set our route as /:ID. We'll set up our request and response, set that equal to an arrow function. And this is going to be an async function, so we'll just go ahead and add the async right there. And we'll do await admin.firestore.collection users.doc, and we'll pass it our request.params.id, and we'll do a delete on that item. And once that is finished, we will do response.status, and we'll pass back a 200 as a successful deletion, and send. And as with everything else, we will run our deploy script, and I will be back as soon as that is finished. So the function has finished uploading, and now we're going to test it. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab this body and remove it and say none. And then I'm going to change this to a delete request. And since our route is exactly the same, all I have to do is hit send. and you'll see that our item was deleted out of the database. Now this is going to wrap it up for the tutorial. If you got any value out of this, go ahead and smash that like and subscribe button. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, go ahead and leave them in the comment section below. And until next time, happy coding.